Okay, so what we're going to do now is set up the palette for the painting that we will work with. And with this palette, I think I have a earlier video that shows you a little bit about how to set up the palette. I'm going to use a cadmium red light, or medium, I should say, for this warm red. I'm going to use an alizarin crimson or quinacridine red, which will act as the cooler red. Many times when you're mixing colors, if you have just one of the complements, it's very difficult to get the other um, version of the secondary colors that you're looking for. So that's why it's always good to use a split complement. And in this way, you don't have to use a whole lot of different colors. You can mix a lot of the colors. This is the cadmium yellow medium that I'm using here. Now I think I need to get another tube. I think I almost might be the end of that. And I'm gonna use lemon yellow, but this comes in a lot of different names. It may be cadmium yellow, lemon. Um, I will have a list, or I think I have a list that you can look at and try to buy the colors that you need. But a lemon yellow, and then I'm using an ultramarine blue. This color will work well with the umbers to make your grays and blacks. And we'll use a cerulean blue for our other blue to get some of the purples and the sky colors and some of the lighter versions of the purples that we would want. So I'll put that down. So we have an ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, cadmium medium, and lemon, and cadmium red, and the alizarin crimson or quinacridine red. So I'm going to put the umber in. You can use burnt umber, might be good, or you can use raw umber. You have a burnt umber, raw umber, burnt sienna, raw sienna. These are your earth colors. I think in this case I have raw umber, and I'll put that there on the end. And I'm putting these colors out in such a way along the top so that I can use the bottom part of the palette to mix and have a lot of room to mix the colors and make other variations of them and work kind of down along the bottom of the color. So I'm going to use white, and when you buy white, you should always buy more white than you buy other colors, because it will be the color that will be mixed many times with most of the other colors in order to lighten the color so you can see it better or make other variations. And so you'll wind up probably using a lot of white. So get a larger tube of white. Okay, so now I've set the palette up and you can kind of see where the colors go. Okay, now we're going to start working on the painting. I have a iPad image of the painting that we're going to copy, and we'll use this. I'll use this to look at as I'm drawing the image. I have put up something on the Facebook page that you can copy of this image, and you can follow along as I'm working, or you can do this at another time. I'm working on an 8 by 10 canvas. You can buy these in, you know, maybe a 10 canvas set at Michael's, but we've already probably talked about this, or you have some information on this already. But I'm going to draw the image. You don't have to be very precise. As you paint, you take the edges in and out, and you can kind of vary them, but you want to try to get as good a drawing as you can. And I'm trying to do all of these images that we work with as very simple images, because I don't want this to be a drawing class as much as a painting class. That is, I want to give you some information on how to apply paint, use different colors to get the effect that you want. If you draw well, then you know you can just freehand these images. Or if you don't, the reason we use an 8 by 10 uh, uh, canvas is because it's about the size that you can print out these images, and you can in this case, if it's a problem drawing, you don't want to always trace things that you do, but you could just trace these images up so that you can get them in. Uh, it's better if you can draw them, but don't worry about that so much. What is important now, though, is applying paint and how that and using different color combinations to get the image that you want. So that's what we'll be concentrating on in this class. So all of the images that we'll be working with will be relatively simple images so that you can look more at lighting effects, color, and how to put things in, how to actually apply paint on a canvas to make certain types of effects. So I'm drawing the simple, these are, like raspberries or cherries, I guess, and trying to draw those in. Any of this stuff that we do on these drawings, you can kind of move things around. We want to have the image generally so that we can use the kind of lighting that is placed on this. When many the artists in the past learned how to paint, what they did was go to museums and look at paintings of other artists and copy the work. The reason that we're working with these images of paintings instead of a photograph is I want some of the imagery to be deciphered for you. So what you'll be looking at is how to mix and put the colors on. And then later on in the class, we'll use our own images, and you will paint. But you won't have to think about all of these things at one time. So now I'm beginning to look at putting some color in the background. So we'll start with the background and paint forward. That's usually the way I like to do it. I see a lot of people painting, and they'll paint the forward object first, and then they try to paint. But if you paint the image, uh, you know, especially when you're doing a still life like this, kind of the background, and then come forward, and then you'll be painting back and forth as you go. Okay, I'm using the cadmium yellow and I think some ultramarine blue. And this color is not the color one. I'm trying to get a kind of a light bluish green. So you can see how different combinations don't work. So if I'm thinking of getting a greenish blue. So you might think, well, I'll use a blue and a yellow. Well, it depends on what blue and yellow you use. So now I'm going to the cerulean blue and the lemon yellow, and you can see now that that color begins to be a little bit more like what I'm trying to get for that background. So this gives you a good example of how the different primaries, if you have a split primary, you can get different types of colors. I would never have been able to get this type of greenish blue with if I only use ultramarine and cadmium. And sometimes when people are using just one primary color, they have that problem because they find out they can't get certain types of color. So by using the split complement, you can get a little bit better. I've jumped here a little bit, and so you don't have to watch me put in all of these colors. I'll be doing this with all of the videos when it's just working with certain kind of basic things. So I'm just trying to put the background color in. Other thing is you look at is don't try to get too smooth with the color. Let it be um, open and let some air into the color. Sometimes people paint much too um, much too solid, and you get this kind of color that has no life to it. So we'll be going back over this quite a bit, and so I'm just trying to get a basic covering of that background with the general color. This color will change. It's somewhere in the realm of what we're looking for, but it's not exactly everything that we want. So now I can start adding, maybe in this case, I've just added a little bit more of the yellow and made a part of this maybe a little more green. As you look at the painting that you're working with, you can see how the artist has uh, put in some light in certain areas by lightening the color. You can lighten the color in this case by adding the lighter version, that is the yellow. You're using a yellow and blue combination. And then in the darker areas, you can add a little bit more of the blue. And then you can add white to make the color go in a little bit more of a lighter version without taking the color toward green. So as you see, I'm trying to fill in certain areas without totally taking any of the colors solidly until as I get toward the end, I will start blending the color and making it build it up some. So I'm doing a little shadow here. So this is more of the blue that I'm using, and trying to keep all of these things relatively loose at this point. So I'm going to look at, I think, doing this background some, and so I'll add some white to the mixture that we already have, right? Because this is supposed to be a white table with kind of a bluish green background. So much that color would be reflected, the color of the background would be reflected on the table some. So I'm going to use a combination of those colors to make kind of a gray. So I'll build the white of the tablecloth up by adding more white as I go. So as I'm doing this, this is still the basic color that we'll use as the shadow in a way, but I'm going to put it all over the image. And as I paint wet and wet, that is while this color is still wet that I'm putting down, because I'm painting a relatively small image, I can get back to the area after I fill the portion that is the tabletop in. My paint will still be a little wet, and so to blend some of the colors, I can come back in and paint those while the color that I've used for the tabletop is still wet. So I've kind of filled out all the colors, and I've jumped to here again, and I've started to put some of the shadowing in. Now, if you look at the painting that is there, the shadowing is kind of has a blue tinge to it. Now, if you look at a real object or a photograph, you may not see the colors this brightly, and you'll be able to take the colors down as you go. But it is good to start here and then use your adjustments as you go, and your judgment of how the colors look to you in real life to adjust it down. So you can, I'm using the ultramarine blue for the shadows, and I'm painting wet and wet on top of that table top. And I'm using a little bit of the umber to paint right around the edge of the bottom of each one of the cherries, so that that blend of the blue and the yellow uh, can be soft. And when I paint the shadows first, what is good about that is when I start back on the actual cherries, I will be painting over those, and I can make those edges a little bit better. Now, I picked this painting because of the simple top of the object that is reflective. So it's just some solid stripes, and there's some places where you will blend the color going around, so it'll have a smooth blend, or you will just make the color go down. And so if you look, what is happening is whatever is in the background, say maybe that's a door and a wall, that it is being reflected in that shiny object. And it is probably best to paint just dabs of color for any types of objects that you want to be reflective. I'm using paper towel to clean my brush as I move from one object to the next, sometimes so that I can keep a little bit of that paint, or I'll use the water, which is out of the picture here, and just wash the brush and clean it out completely. I'm using the same brush generally for the whole painting here, but many times you'll change up brushes, or you may have a couple of different brushes. Sometimes you want to have a brush uh, for different colors that you're working with in the in an object, or if you're painting a portrait or that kind of thing. So you might have a couple of brushes, or you have brushes that work better for certain types of strokes, and we'll look at some of that kind of thing a little later on. But in this case, I'm just using a basic Bristol brush. It just looks like maybe a number two brush that gives me the ability to draw some, but at the same time put some nice broad uh, stripes in.